Hi everyone. Today is Thursday, March 16th, 2017. My name is Brian McInerney. I'm a hydrologist for the National Weather Service, and this is the hydrologic outlook for Tooele County area. I had given a briefing to Bucky Whitehouse, who's the emergency manager for Tooele County, and some of the other public works and law enforcement, and they suggested I make a briefing and kind of share it with the community, and I was delighted to do so. So let's take a look at where we are in Tooele County. So when we look at the soil moisture, this is the modeled soil moisture as of March 1st. And it's not so much below or above, it's the basic amount of moisture or the amount of inches of water to saturation. And when you look at that Kelly Green area north of the Great Salt Lake, that's Box Elder County. A little bit farther east is Cache County. Those are the two most saturated areas in the state, and they've also had some field flooding back in February. But if you look at Tooele County, where we are, a little bit farther south, you can see that there's a lot of that light green area. So it means we have some pore space to have infiltration into the area. And if you look at the red, those are the mountains and the Ochres and the Stansberries that have frozen ground and snow above that. So they have a lot of space. But it gives you an idea. You're not as bad as Box Elder County with regard to flood threat, and also with the temperatures we have as of the 16th. These soils are drying out a little more. So let's take a look at precip. Let's start in December. And when you look at areas of the Great Salt Lake and you look just south of there, what we see for Tooele is in that 130 to 150% range, maybe 110 to 130 in some of the areas. But the snowpack or the snowfall in December in the precip was quite good in December, and it was a good way to start things off. But when you look in the mountains, you want to see the area off of Tooele, and that's what we see, kind of in that 130 to 150% range. Then you look at January, and we see a little bit different picture: 150 to 200% precipitation, and even a little bit farther west, farther east, there was probably in the range of 2 to 300% precipitation. When you look at the mountains where it really counts, 2 to 300% in some areas and 150 to 200% during January. So again, 2 months in a row above average precip, we'll take it. And then February, and we look at the Great Basin area, and what we see are areas of 150 to 200% and 130 to 150% in your area for the most part, and that's another good month in a row. So we look at that and you think, okay, we're doing great. Something to consider though, during February we had storms that were quite warm, and they were fueled by atmospheric rivers that are anomalously wet, but they're warm, and we had rain up to 9,000 feet. So low elevation watersheds received a lot of rain that has now since gone away and not stored in the mountains. When you look at the mountain snowpack, snowfall during February, that's what you see. And we see areas of 150 to 200% in February, some areas 2 to 300% in the southern end, but doing much better all around compared to other years. When we look at temperatures, we start with December, and this is a map of the entire U.S. And I do this just to give you a perspective of where Utah fits in the rest of the country. But for in our purposes, in December it was 1 to 3 degrees cooler than average, which is great. That's what you want to see, because then it's falling as snow. Then in January we were 3 to 5 degrees above, which is another good month for temperature for us. Notice the eastern half is warmer. This was a flip-flop than what we had the last 5 years. Western U.S. has been quite warm compared to the east, but this year it's quite different. And then February hit. The first part of February is 15 degrees above what we typically see, and that was when we got the rain events below 9,000 feet on 3 different occasions. It would have been nice to have more snow, but we got rain during that, and then it cooled off the rest of February. When we look at the Salt Lake Airport for February, what we see is about, started to warm up February 3rd, and we went up to roughly 23 degrees above average at one point in February. You can translate that to the Tooele Valley with the range of warming from the 3rd all the way through the 15th, and that's what we see. When you look at March, we see more of the same for the most part. It's been quite warm from February and March compared to December and January. And from the 8th on through the 15th, we've been melting a lot of the low elevation snowpack, where we've lost, about 3/10 of an inch per day. Overall, I think we've lost about 3 inches of water in the low elevation snowpack up to about 7,000 feet. So when you look at our snowpack, and we'll look at 2 points. The first one, Rocky Basin settlement. The y-axis is snow water equivalent, the amount of water in the snowpack at this one point, and time on the bottom starting on October 1st. The navy line is average, what you would expect here. And then I asked this when I made this graph, give me the 2 biggest years we've had, which are 2011, 2005. 2011 is in the red, 2005 is the teal. We're the green line, which is not complete because we really don't know what's going to happen from here on out for about 7 days roughly. But you can see we've kind of rolled over with that temperature. We're melting about a month early in this area. Whether this continues will affect how this is going to come off in the spring. If we keep this same amount of heat relative to what is the average, we're going to melt this snowpack off early. We're going to lose a lot of water to evaporation and transpiration when the plants come back early, and it's going to be very inefficient. Hopefully we can get cold, and it does look like sometime early next week, it looks like we're going to have another system, a cold system, so it'll stop this heat. Mining fork, again, it's 142% of median. We're melting at about 2/10 of an inch per day, and you can see where we are with 2011, better than 2005. But we don't want to keep this melting going on. And on the flip side, we don't want to really see a significant cold spell with a lot of snow like we saw in 1983. So when you look at water supply, let's start with the Six Creeks area. These are the basins over by Salt Lake County, because the Colorado Basin River Forecast Center, which is part of the National Weather Service, we don't do water supply forecasts for the points in Tooele for the most part. But when you look at early March, we're expecting 137% of average, 52,000 acre feet from that point right there, which is the outflow of Little Cottonwood Canyon. And then we look at City Creek, which is a low elevation watershed. You notice the numbers aren't as good, 112% of average, and that's really due to those warm storms that came through, put down rain at the lower elevations below 9,000 feet. And as a result, it's not snow in the mountains that's stored there, it's gone. So low elevation watersheds in Tooele County will have less snow, less percent of runoff coming this year. And you can kind of use this as a proxy as to where you are in Tooele County. And then we'll do one more, and this is Utah lake drainage, and we'll look at the headwater up high, 168% of average at the Provo near Woodland area. This is above Jordanelle. And then what we'll do is we'll look at the Spanish Fork area near Castilla at 175% of average. So you see these numbers are really quite high. Something to note, since this forecast was made, we've had significant warming, so we've dropped some of these forecasts somewhat. There's still quite healthy numbers as we've got in the Tooele Valley, but if it continues with this heat, those numbers are going to continue to decline, and if it keeps going, we could have just kind of a normal runoff. Hopefully that won't happen. Hopefully we can have an excessive runoff without the flooding that we saw earlier. When you look at the peak flow forecast, this graphic kind of blows you away when you first look at it, but let's take a look in 2 parts. The station name are the columns a little bit to the left of this box. Then you look across for each line, and it gives you the historic peak, the average peak, the flood flow, what last year's peak, and the date. So it's kind of a reference column. And then we say what streams look like they're going to produce flood flows. And what you see in the red are mostly areas of Cache County and Box Elder County due to a combination of higher snowpacks, more saturated soils, and bigger runoff volumes. Now how this comes off, it still remains to be seen. We could still get out of this without any flooding at all if we keep this warm weather and we prematurely melt. That's unlikely to happen. Everything we've had so far weather-wise this year has been one of extremes. Very high precipitation amounts, warming, record warming is what we're seeing right now, and that could continue. But these are the numbers we see right now. When it says 50th percent, that means the most probable occurrence of that happening. So when we look at, say, Bear near border, this is a river gauge near the border of Idaho and Utah. The 50th percent it calls for 4,084 CFS, and the flood flow for this point is 3,217. So we do anticipate flooding when we made this forecast, but we'll have to wait and see. The next round will come early April and we'll revise these numbers. So when you look at the drought monitor, and this was as of late February, Utah has very little drought. Maybe your area is abnormally dry, but after this year, most likely we're going to wipe that designation off. Depending on, again, this heat and the runoff, we'll see how this goes. But if you look at what areas have improved, for the most part, the West Desert has improved a great deal in Utah. California has improved tremendously. But there's improvement in your area, significant improvement. Maybe 2 classes that have gone from, roughly D1, D2 to just maybe D0, which is really nice to see. So there you have it. My name is Brian McInerney. There's my phone number. Give me a call. It's a cell phone in my pocket. There's my email. Anything I can do for you to help you out. Again, we'll have to see how the weather goes. Cold and wet. We're going to ramp these numbers up. We could have some issues. But warm and dry, we'll have a nice runoff. We shouldn't have any issues in the Tooele Valley, but we're waiting to see how this shakes out. Until then, we'll talk again. Thank you.